His voice remained steady, though every word was heavy with the stories of the forgotten. In Burkina Faso, children walk miles for clean water. Mothers bury their dreams with their children. They live every day with the consequences of greed, of neglect. The hall grew quieter, faces softened. I am not angry. I'm hopeful. Because even in silence, I see the strength of my people, the power of truth. He paused one last time, then added softly, "We will not be ignored any longer." A single tear traced his cheek. A camera captured it, tanned with it. A moment. The world would never forget, and then the wave began. Delegates whispered, phones lit up, videos were shared in real time. Social media erupted. Stand with Traoré, Zinghal, Dignity for Africa, both trending globally within minutes. Backstage, reporters scrambled, interviews were demanded. Meanwhile, Traoré sat down, hands folded, eyes steady, heart pounding. He had spoken not just for Burkina Faso, but for every silenced voice across the world. Across the hall, Trump's face shifted. Was it regret or disbelief? No one could say. But one thing was clear, Traoré's stillness had sparked a silent rebellion. One fought not with weapons, but with courage and truth. Outside, the chants grew even louder. Inside, hearts were opening. For the first time, this summit was no longer about politics, it was about justice. Then, just as the tensions seemed to peak, a final announcement broke through, a surprise press conference to be held immediately. Whispers surged. All eyes turned to Traoré. He rose, carrying the weight of a continent. But on his face was no anger, no defiance, so only a quiet, humble smile. Live cameras rolled. The world leaned in. I do not stand here to divide, he began. I stand to unite. To remind us that true leadership is service, service to every child who deserves a future. The world held its breath, and even those who doubted him began to feel something stirring, not outrage, hope, because sometimes the most powerful revolution isn't waged with fists, it is spoken with words. And Traoré's words were about to echo far beyond that room. Videos of Trump's refusal to sit beside Traoré flooded every social platform. But it wasn't the controversy that captured the world's heart. It was Traoré, his calm, his dignity, his truth. From the dusty streets of Ouagadougou to the glass towers of New York, millions watched in disbelief, in awe. People began sharing their own stories of being silenced, of being ignored, and yet finding strength in the quiet. And slowly, the world stopped seeing Traoré as just a leader. He became something more, a symbol. Not of perfection, but of hope. He wasn't perfect, he was real. And it was that realness, his humility, his quiet strength, that made people believe in the impossible. Each retweet, each share became more than just digital noise. It was fuel for a fire that was no longer just political. It reached deeper into the souls of people across continents who had been overlooked, silenced, or forgotten. From Burkina Faso to Brazil, from the streets of Ouagadougou to the towers of New York, people felt it. This wasn't just about geography or power anymore. It had become a universal cry for dignity. Behind closed doors, far from the camera lights, Captain Traoré found a quiet corner. A young aide approached, her voice trembling. "Captain," she said softly, "the world is watching. They're inspired. But there are some who want to silence this moment." He turned toward the window, eyes distant yet clear. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Truth has a way of breaking walls, but the path is never easy." He thought of the sacrifices, the friends he'd lost, the sleepless nights, questioning whether the fight was worth it. Then he remembered the faces of the children back home, their eyes filled with hope. He clenched his fist gently and whispered to himself, "For them, I will keep speaking." And that night, in the stillness, a leader renewed his vow. Not to bow, not to break, but to keep standing. By morning, headlines blazed across the globe, Traoré's triumph, when silence spoke louder than words. Commentators argued. Some mocked, others praised. But most, regardless of politics, felt something rare, a stirring in their hearts. Teachers played the speech in classrooms. Children listened. They learned about courage and dignity. In cafes and homes, strangers spoke of respect. Across continents, rallies formed not against Captain Traoré, but for the dignity he represented. Because this wasn't just, the air crackled with the blare of trumpets, laughter, and the relentless clicks of cameras as red, white, and blue banners fluttered above Constitution Avenue. Today was supposed to be a celebration, a birthday parade. For Donald Trump's 79th year, the crowd roared his name, giant golden 79 balloons bobbing behind the stage. Reporters jostled for the best angles. Then a sleek black SUV eased to a stop. Out stepped Captain Ibrahim Traoré, dressed in a sharp olive uniform, his expression unreadable. Though he'd been invited as a diplomatic guest, few truly expected him to attend, and no one could have guessed what would follow. As Trump raised his hand in a showman's welcome, Traoré held back, returned first toward the cheering crowd, then into the nearest camera, and simply said, "Before I shake any hand, I must speak a truth the world has forgotten." Instantly, the celebration froze. Reporters halted mid-sentence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Trump's practiced smile faltered. In that hush, something historic trembled on the edge of happening. The marching band stuttered to a halt. Confetti cannons misfired, and Traoré strode to the microphone. His voice calm, deep, way to cut through the stunned silence. "I stand here not as a politician, but as the son of a woman who was told her pain didn't matter. I come from a land where children learn to bury their parents by the age of 10, while the world sends thoughts but no justice." A hush deepened. A Trump aide moved to interrupt, but Trump himself lifted a hand for quiet. Traoré continued, "Today I remind you, African dignity is not a gift we beg for, it is our birthright. No celebration, no parade, no power can erase that truth." Some in the crowd looked away. Others stared, bewildered. No one dared move. Even the patriotic banners now felt incongruous. Then, as if unfolding a confession, Traoré withdrew a small worn photograph from his jacket. He raised it for all to see. It showed his mother dark-skinned, lined with age, kneeling in dust and tears. "She was my mother," Traoré said, voice trembling. "This was taken after she lost her only sister because her village had no doctor, no clean water, no one to help." He locked eyes first on Trump, then on the supporters. "She believed America could change the world until she learned that America changes only what serves America." A scattered gasp, a few boos, some claps. But no one flinched Traoré's steady gaze.
"Yes.
"I'm not here to insult," he said, softly, "but to ask, why must our dignity always cost someone else's comfort?" Trump's jaw clenched, his hand dropped. Somewhere in the audience, an elderly woman, white-haired, wrapped in a red "Make America Great Again" cap, rose. To her feet, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. We never knew." A single tear traced her cheek as a CNN camera captured the moment. In seconds, the image went viral. Trump, silent, seemed shaken. Traoré gently refolded the photograph and tucked it away. The hush lingered, broken only by distant birdsong and the soft, shocked breathing of spectators. "My mission today," he said, "is not to humiliate, but to remind the world, silence has a cost. That cost was my mother." Before anyone could react, agents stirred at the edge of the stage. Two stepped toward. Trumpet still, none interrupted Traoré. He reached into his jacket again, this time unveiling an aged, crumpled letter. This was written by a U.S. oil company to a dictator in West Africa, he announced. It promised weapons in exchange for silence. That dictator killed over 30,000 of his own people. One was my cousin. And that company has never faced justice. A collective gasp. A woman fainted. A Secret Service agent stepped between Trump and the captain. Still Traoré, didn't he waver. "The truth," he said quietly, once spoken, "is more dangerous than any bullet." Melania Trump, seated beside her husband, leaned forward, her face flickering through confusion. Concern, then something brutally human. She whispered into Trump's ear. He didn't respond. He stared ahead, jaw tight. Traoré paused, meeting her eyes in that moment of unspoken understanding. "Some here have seen the truth but were forced into silence," he said. Melania looked away. Across the crowd, a child tugged at a parent's sleeve. "Mom, why is everyone so sad?" No one had an answer. This was no longer a birthday parade. It was a reckoning. A funeral for willful ignorance. "My mother died," nameless Traoré concluded, voice now softer, almost lullaby-like. "But today her story speaks on American soil, echoing between your skyscrapers." Silence descended again, so heavy it was almost tactile. Then a child wept. An elderly man quietly removed his Trump 2024 pin and tucked it into his pocket. In a handful of words, Captain Ibrahim Traoré had done what no weapon ever could. He had made America weep, and he was only getting started. The air was thick with anticipation as trumpets blared and cameras flashed beneath the fluttering red, white and blue banners above Constitution Avenue. What should have been a jubilant birthday parade for Donald Trump's tea, the story of two men. It was a story about all of us, about standing tall when the world tries to shrink you, about dignity, about truth. And the question on everyone's lips was no longer, what did Captain Traoré say? It had become, what will we say when it's our turn? With that, he stepped forward, phone in hand. "Sir Traoré," said, extending the call, "would you like to speak with them, or will silence remain the answer?" Trump hesitated. From the phone came distant cries, a mother's wail for her child. Cameras swarmed. Viewers around the globe pressed share. In that moment, politics fell away. Humanity took its place. After a tense pause, Trump spoke. "Captain Traoré, I didn't expect this. But your words about dignity, about visibility, they struck me. Maybe the world needs more of that." Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd. It was neither apology nor defeat, but the closest thing to humility he had ever shown. Traoré nodded once, quietly dignified, then let the moment breathe. He turned to face the audience. You cannot silence a storm once it begins to rain. As the applause rose anew, Traoré stepped down and moved through the crowd. There, he found an elderly African-American veteran in a battered wheelchair, medals askew on his chest. "I served in Vietnam and came home to silence," the old soldier said, voice cracking. Traoré knelt and took his hand. "Today," he replied, "we fought with truth, not bullets." They embraced, and in that hug, the cameras capturing every second, centuries of sorrow gave way to connection. Across continents, families watched in tears, finally feeling seen. As dusk settled over Washington, the parade's fireworks began bright, but almost secondary to what had just happened. Traoré slipped quietly away from the cameras, banners, and fanfare. A reporter chased him. "Captain, why come if you shunned the spotlight?" He paused, then answered simply, "Dignity isn't claimed in headlines, it's earned in silence." Inside the White House, Trump stared at Miriam's letter, still open on his desk. Outside, thousands unfurled African flags, not in protest, but in pride. What began as a birthday parade had become a reckoning, a chorus of voices rising from forgotten places. If this story moved you, if it made you pause or shed a tear, share it. Because sometimes a single story told with truth can change everything.